What happens when Disney's biggest live-action remake crashes and burns before it even has a chance to soar? Well, if you ask Rachel Ziegler, it's the Snow White disaster that no one saw coming. From a dream role to a box office nightmare, this film's journey has been nothing short of a train wreck. But how did this highly anticipated project go so wrong, and what's the real story behind the chaos? Grab your popcorn, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most talked about flops in Hollywood history. When Rachel Ziegler was cast as the lead in Disney's live-action Snow White, it seemed like the perfect storm of opportunity. After her breakout performance in West Side Story, Hollywood had its eyes on her as the next big star. Disney was all in, banking on her fresh talent to breathe new life into one of their most beloved classics. The excitement was palpable. Snow White was set to be a grand, progressive reimagining, and Ziegler, with her boldness and talent, seemed to fit the vision perfectly. The concept promised a Snow White who wasn't just waiting for a prince to save her, but one who would take control of her own destiny, a feminist twist that would make the fairy tale feel modern and relevant. Fans were eager to see how Disney would update the timeless story, and the studio's marketing machine went into overdrive. It was supposed to be Rachel's moment, her career-defining role, but this would prove to be more than she bargained for, because as the buzz grew, so did the pressure, and the more attention Ziegler got, the more the cracks started to show. What should have been a Cinderella story in the making quickly began to spiral into something far darker, and it all started with an offhand comment. It didn't take long for the excitement around Snow White to turn into a full-blown controversy. Rachel Ziegler, who had been an up-and-coming star, quickly found herself at the center of a storm after making some bold and highly controversial comments. In one now infamous interview, Ziegler criticized the original 1937 Snow White, calling out the prince's behavior as stalking and labeling the love story as outdated and problematic. Fans were immediately furious, feeling that Ziegler wasn't just critiquing the film, but mocking its legacy. What was supposed to be a modern reimagining of the fairy tale turned into a heated debate about respect, tradition, and the direction Hollywood was taking. Her comments didn't just spark disagreement, they fueled an online firestorm. The backlash was swift, and what followed was a cascade of negative reactions, with many accusing Ziegler of disrespecting the very film and character she was hired to portray. As the storm raged, Ziegler attempted to defend herself, but the more she spoke, the more the controversy grew. Rather than focusing on the excitement of portraying Snow White, she became known for her outspoken political views, which only added fuel to the fire. What was once an exciting project was now a battleground for public opinion, and the film hadn't even been released yet. Just when it seemed like the backlash couldn't get worse, Snow White hit another major stumbling block: the controversy over the dwarfs. Disney's decision to cast magical creatures instead of the traditional dwarfs was met with intense criticism, and this time, it wasn't just fans who were upset. Peter Dinklage, a prominent actor with dwarfism, publicly slammed the decision, calling it a step backward for representation. He argued that while Disney had made strides by casting Ziegler, a Latina actress, as Snow White, casting little people as dwarfs in a modern retelling was tone-deaf and perpetuated outdated stereotypes. Disney, eager to avoid further backlash, quickly announced they would make changes. The dwarfs were no longer dwarfs, they were magical creatures. The decision was meant to placate critics, but instead it only raised more questions. Fans, especially those from the dwarfism community, felt the studio had missed the mark entirely. Instead of sticking with the original vision or making a real effort to portray little people in a positive light, Disney seemed to be retreating from the issue altogether, making it worse in the process. This move left the film in an even more precarious position. What was supposed to be a progressive, inclusive remake now felt like a poorly thought out attempt at political correctness, and the damage was done. The release of Snow White was supposed to mark a monumental moment for Disney, but instead it became a full-fledged disaster. Despite millions spent on marketing, ticket sales were shockingly underwhelming. On opening weekend, the film struggled to make a dent at the box office, and it quickly became clear that something had gone horribly wrong. While other films like Minecraft, yes, the one about pixelated blocks, were raking in tens of millions of dollars, Snow White floundered. The numbers told the story. Disney's grand remake had failed to connect with audiences. As the box office numbers tanked, social media erupted with videos of nearly empty theaters. Fans posted footage of themselves walking into showings and finding the rooms practically deserted. The lack of interest was so glaring that it became a running joke online. People weren't just ignoring the movie, they were actively mocking its failure. It wasn't just the low turnout that stung, it was the sheer disappointment. What was meant to be a culturally relevant, exciting update to a classic Disney story felt flat. And as more people saw the disastrous results, results, the reputation of both the film and its lead actress, Rachel Ziegler, continued to unravel. Disney had invested heavily, but the returns were nothing short of humiliating. The Snow White premiere disaster was now the stuff of Hollywood infamy. Just when things seemed like they couldn't get worse for Rachel Ziegler and the Snow White team, The Simpsons came in for the kill. In their signature biting style, the legendary animated show unleashed a savage parody that turned the already disastrous remake into a full-blown cultural punchline. The episode, titled Snow Woke the Reimagining, skewered Ziegler's portrayal of Snow White, casting her as a self-absorbed, politically correct girl boss who bans princes and lectures villagers on social justice. The parody didn't just poke fun at the movie, it painted Ziegler's Snow White as the epitome of out-of-touch modernism, which only intensified the mockery surrounding her and the film. As if the public backlash from critics and fans wasn't enough, now the most iconic animated show in the world was joining in. The episode showed Ziegler's character making decisions that were widely seen as tone-deaf and disconnected from the original charm of the fairy tale, further cementing the idea that Disney had gone too far in trying to modernize the classic. The Simpsons episode went viral, and the mockery only deepened Ziegler's already tarnished public image. Rather than being seen as a star of a new era, she was now the subject of ridicule, and the Snow White remake had become a pop culture joke, one that even Disney couldn't avoid. As the Snow White disaster continued to unfold, Rachel Ziegler's personal and professional life seemed to unravel in real time. Hollywood, which had once hailed her as the next breakout star, started to distance itself from the actress. Casting calls that had once highlighted her name began to quietly disappear, and projects rumored to feature her either stalled or were swiftly recast. It was clear that the fallout from Snow White was no longer just a box office failure. It was a full-blown career crisis. Behind the scenes, sources revealed that Disney and other major studios were beginning to reassess their relationship with Ziegler. The actress, who had previously been a darling of the media, was now associated with controversy and bad press. Public appearances became few and far between, and her social media accounts, once filled with updates about her work, were eerily quiet. It seemed that Ziegler was retreating into silence, perhaps realizing the damage done to her public image. Adding to the drama, Ziegler's very public breakup with actor Yash Andreas Rivera generated more headlines, feeding the narrative of a star unable to handle the pressures of fame. With the pressure mounting from all sides, it was becoming increasingly clear that Ziegler's once promising career was in serious jeopardy, and her attempts to salvage it were getting harder with every passing day. Just as the dust seemed to settle on the Snow White debacle, Rachel Ziegler vanished from the spotlight. In a move that surprised many, the actress went completely silent, pulling back from public life and retreating from social media. No interviews, no updates, no tweets or Instagram posts, nothing. It was as if she had disappeared overnight. Meanwhile, Disney, which had previously been silent about the film's failure, reportedly made the decision to cancel all of Ziegler's promotional appearances. The studio, already reeling from the backlash, wanted to distance itself from the disaster as quickly as possible, and Ziegler seemed to be a casualty of their efforts to minimize the damage. The silence was deafening, and fans began to speculate. Was this Rachel's way of taking a step back and regrouping, or was it a sign of a more serious problem with Ziegler's career in freefall? Hollywood loves a good redemption story, but the road to recovery was looking steep for the young actress. What once seemed like a star on the rise now appeared to be a cautionary tale. The world was watching, waiting to see if Ziegler could bounce back from the colossal failure of Snow White, or if her career had already reached its breaking point. The story of Rachel Ziegler and Snow White is a cautionary tale of how quickly fame can turn to infamy. What was meant to be a star-making role in one of Disney's most iconic franchises became a full-blown Hollywood disaster. From the backlash over her comments to the controversy surrounding the film's casting choices, and even the mockery from The Simpsons, the project spiraled out of control at every turn. As the box office numbers tanked and the negative press piled up, Ziegler found herself at the center of a media storm that overshadowed her career's potential. But here's the real question: can Rachel Ziegler recover from this monumental failure? Hollywood loves a comeback, but with her public image in tatters and her future in the industry uncertain, only time will tell if she can rebuild her career. For now, Snow White remains one of the most divisive Disney remakes in recent history, and Ziegler's role in it will be remembered for all the wrong reasons. So, what do you think? Is this the end of Rachel Ziegler's time in the spotlight, or could there still be hope for a redemption arc? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.